logistics as briefed. You've signed for the Royal flights. Check you've got a frequency card and video if you require one. No terms and can keys, nothing to affect your area. ComSec as always, please. Bird concentration is assessed as low, not going to the range. ROE and evasion limits, I assume you're briefed. SOC you're briefed. Gazers and TR 484 apply. Have a good trip.
Welcome to the 1993 Leeming Air Fair. I'm Group Captain Phil Rosa, the Station Commander at Royal Air Force Leeming. You see us at an important time for two reasons. Firstly, it is of course the 75th anniversary of the Royal Air Force itself, and our air display contains elements from many areas of that history of those 75 years. Secondly, RAF Leeming is an operational base, and at the moment we have one squadron on an operation, that's Operation Deny Flight, operating out of southern Italy and mounting daily combat air patrols over the no-fly zone imposed by the United Nations over Bosnia-Herzegovina. And the whole station, of course, is supporting that operation. Now, Royal Air Force Leeming is the home for 3 Tornado F3 air defence squadrons, and air defence is our role as a base. We are the largest wing of air defence squadrons because we're the only RAF station of air defence fighters which has 3 squadrons. But air defence, of course, isn't just confined to RAF Leeming, although our operations here feature sheltering the aircraft in hardened aircraft shelters and sheltering our people in similar shelters of reinforced concrete to make sure that if the United Kingdom were attacked, then we will be able to protect our people and enable our fighters to stay in the air and to keep going despite those attacks. But of course we don't just operate from RAF Leeming. We're available to deploy anywhere in the world where an emergency might befall us, and we have to be able to respond to any emergency worldwide with operations mounted by day or night in any weather. That applies to our fighters, but it also applies to our surface-to-air missiles, which operate here under the banner of number 15 Squadron Royal Air Force Regiment. And they have Rapier fire units for the point defence of RAF Leeming and the area around us, but equally they're mobile and could deploy anywhere where they are needed to protect a particularly vital asset. We have another very visible operational unit here, which is our mountain rescue team, and many of you will have seen them out and about on the hills in the local area and indeed throughout of the UK. And they've had a tremendous number of operational call-outs this year in response to calls for rescues, whether they be from a crashed aircraft or from any civilian or serviceman, indeed, getting in trouble on the hills and areas around RAF Leeming. You also see operating from here a couple of other units. We have a University Air Squadron, which operates Bulldog piston aircraft, where we're able to take youngsters from the age of 18 to 21 at university and give them their first proper flying instruction in RAF aircraft. But at an even tenderer age than that, age 13 and a half onwards, we have an air experience flight which operates Chipmunk piston aircraft and give them their first taste of flying. And believe me, I fly not only in the Tornado, but in those Chipmunks and Bulldogs. And to take somebody up at the age of 13 and a half for their very first flight in a small aircraft is really quite an amazing experience. That really summarizes the units on this very busy station. So you can see we do have an impact on the local community, of which we are very conscious indeed. And it's our privilege to be part of that community and to contribute to it wherever we possibly can. The Leeming Air Fair is just one of those contributions. It's our opportunity to show you what happens at Royal Air Force Leeming and how we are serving you and the community. Everything we do today is for your benefit. All of the money which we raise as a result of charging entrance fees and having various stalls and sideshows and market areas on display here is to allow us to make money for charity, and that is the sole aim of our efforts today.
After an early morning shower, the skies cleared to reveal high broken cloud, sunshine, and a welcoming blue sky. The RAF Falcon's free-fall parachute team board their C-130 Hercules transport aircraft for what was to be the first air display of the day. Once airborne, the views above Leeming were breathtaking in the crystal clear atmosphere. But with winds gusting to over 30 knots and exceeding the maximum safety level, the dive was reluctantly abandoned. A low pass over the airfield with the back door open afforded our intrepid cameraman a unique view of the airfair. From the back door to the flight deck, and a view over the pilot's shoulder as he struggles with the controls to keep the aircraft on a straight approach while landing in a strong and gusting crosswind. Meanwhile, safely down on terra firma, things were beginning to happen in the arena. But to reach this point took months of careful planning. Squadron leader Chris Wynne explains.
It's taken quite a lot of my life over the past year. I was appointed actually in July of last year, the week before the previous air show, which gave me a week to get around and get a feel for how my predecessor was organising what was then called the Country Fair and Air Day. And that was a huge leap forward. Country Fair and Air Day was, if you can imagine, the step forward from a small families day, a few thousand people, mostly station dependents, to an airfare with a 3-hour flying display. And during the past year, surprisingly, a lot of the work is front-loaded. I was very busy during August and September. We actually have to make our bids for the aircraft for the coming year by the 1st of September. So I was actually instrumental in, I didn't at that time have a flying display director, so I was instrumental in putting in the initial bids to an organisation called the RAF Participation Committee, who coordinate all of the RAF's involvement and the involvement from foreign air forces. We put in a bid. Basically, we wrote a signal saying, send us everything, it's going to be bigger and better this year. We asked for a whole range of things, from stealth aircraft through to MiGs. Realism unfortunately got in the way, and we had to accept a programme which is pretty much as you see it now. And we've been able to expand on that. Since that time, we have started creating a team, an airfare team, and of course the first person on the team has got to be the flying display director, who has to be by RF regulations a pilot, or at least a squadron leader aircrew member. We've actually had 3 display directors, but that's because of our commitments elsewhere in the world, principally in Operation Deny Flight in Italy. So the first appointment was the display director. My next appointment, and I think a crucial one, was the publicity, because publicity is really where we live or die, on how good our publicity is, and I think it's been quite good this year. And obviously, we'll carry on. It's a process, we'll evolve, and it'll get better and better. And slowly, over the year, we've got together a team of about 30 people. So we now have a committee of 30 people who meet on a monthly basis. This month, in the month of July, they're meeting on a weekly basis, and they meet on a monthly basis to coordinate their various activities. But it's very much about delegation. It's very much about giving people a task and leaving them to do it themselves and do it in their own way. But actually on the day, we're going to have in excess of 550 people from Leeming working, and that represents a huge percentage of our available workforce. We've got detachments and squadrons are away, various parts around the globe, and practically everybody at Leeming who wasn't clever enough to have put his leave in 3 months ago, everybody at Leeming who is available is working on the day. This year, my planning target is 30,000, but I have contingency plans for up to 50,000 people turning up. In actual fact, I have up my sleeve contingency for up to 60 or 70,000 people. We could cope with that. We've got all the facilities for about 80,000, including the most important thing of all, of course, the toilets. As I said before, organising the event has been a year-round operation, and it's been a year-round operation that a lot of the committee members and the team players have devoted considerable out-of-house activity. I mean, people have been working late at nights. The people on the Grand Charity Draw have been giving up weekend after weekend, and of course the support service to which we owe the biggest vote of thanks are our own wives and families, and it's a big thank you to them, and that's going to cause a lot of harmony in my household.
For anyone who attended the airshow preview on the Friday, the action was thick and fast in perfect weather conditions, as the visiting aircraft arrived and gave some impromptu displays. The first to arrive were the Danish Air Force Saab Draken F-35s from Curragh, giving a lively display of low passes over the airfield. Designed in the 1950s, this aircraft is still in production and more than capable of Mach 2. Also from the Danish Air Force were 2 F-16s, closely followed by 2 Buccaneers from Lossiemouth, a Nimrod from Kinloss, and quite the most colourful Hawk trainer you're ever likely to see. The pizzas in Goya, Italy, must have been late today as the two F-104 starfighters arrived about 2 hours late. But they made amends by giving the spectators some nice low passes. By 6 o'clock, all was now ready, and the static lineup looked very impressive in the late afternoon sun. Tornadoes are what Leeming is all about, so it was fitting to start the display with this dramatic swing-wing variable geometry aircraft. But to fly a tornado is no ordinary experience, as Flight Lieutenants Dave Grieber and Chris Palin of 25 Squadron explain.
Flying the Tornado is obviously a very exhilarating job. It's a good working environment though. It's quiet, even at high speed. Stable and fairly comfortable with a good conditioning system, so you don't tend to overheat too much.
Basically, the navigator's job is to get the pilot into a position where he can actually fire the missiles. To that end, I spend a lot of my time actually looking at a radar screen, which is basically a TV screen. And the only real impression of speed I get is by looking at the numbers at the top of the screen. We normally fly a kind of medium level over sea, where you get very little impression of speed anyway. And because the aircraft is so quiet, speed is almost just a computerized thing. Admittedly, when we go down to low level and you look outside the windows, I've got a very restricted view. I can only really see in kind of my 3 o'clock or my 9 o'clock. And then it looks quite fast and it's quite good fun.
On a 5-hour sortie after a breakfast of several mugs of coffee, what do you do when nature calls?
Well, thankfully it's never happened to me before, but amongst all the paraphernalia that I have in my pockets here, I do have this offensive piece of equipment. I never want to use it. I have never used it so far, and hopefully it'll stay safely tucked in my pocket.
Unless there was a very good party at the officers' mess last night, I doubt if Flight Lieutenants Jerry Gotham and Paul Brown of 56 Squadron, Coningsby, will need that device as they put their Tornado F3 through its paces. Whilst the crowds are captivated by the tornado, the Buccaneer slips quietly by, ready for takeoff. Coming in at over 600 miles per hour, considerable G-forces can be inflicted on the crew. So what stops them from blacking out?
The G-trousers are inflated through this hose using air which is actually bled from the engines. They swell up and squeeze the legs, thus keeping the blood flow to the brain and stopping you going unconscious under G. On the G-trousers we have leg restraints here and here, and also on the life jacket we have an attachment here for arm restraints. On ejection, these are connected all to lanyards which pull as the seat comes up the rails, thus stopping your arms from flailing around as you leave the cockpit and also stopping you from breaking your legs on the seat as you exit.
No such device is needed for Peter Clark of Kirby Moorside. Only a clear head and strong stomach as he demonstrates the Slingsby Firefly. Now, if you've never seen an aircraft land sideways, just watch this. The Harvard, built by North American Aviation, originally called the AT-6 Texan, was built in 1935. In 1938, Air Commander A.T. Harris ordered 200 for training American fighter pilots. Such was the success of the Harvard that over 15,000 were built. The Americans painted their trainers yellow, and the aircraft was affectionately nicknamed the Yellow Peril. The RAF's fast jet advanced trainer, the Hawk, is a favourite for its manoeuvrability in the air and a natural choice for the Red Arrows display team. Flight Lieutenant Geraint Herbert from RAF Valley acquaints himself with the sky above Leeming. After some research into aircraft visibility, this black paint scheme with the characteristic Welsh dragon was the result. Another veteran of the skies from Duxford. Pilot Kevin Morehouse demonstrates how the Mosquito dealt with its role as a low-level pathfinder and fighter bomber. The de Havilland Mosquito was certainly a revolutionary aircraft of its day. Built of cedar and balsa wood, it was equipped with radar and powered by 2 Merlin engines. It became the ultimate night bomber, at least 20 miles per hour faster than anything else flying at that time, and could outrun both the Luftwaffe and the land-based gunners. 7,700 were built, and over 30 Mosquitoes survived the war and are in various states of repair and restoration. Our example today is one of only 2 airworthy aircraft. The Chance Vought Corsair F4U was built primarily for the US Navy in 1940, and the first production examples were flown in 1942. The unique inverted gull wing enabled the engine and fuselage to be well off the ground, allowing for a larger and more powerful propeller. It also enabled the aircraft to have a short, compact undercarriage, which folded away more easily. The aircraft saw considerable action in the Korean War and was also used by the Royal Navy, French and Argentinian navies. The aircraft was equipped with 20mm cannon and a capability of carrying 5-inch rockets or 2 1,000-pound bombs underslung on wing pods with an amazing turn of speed at 450 miles per hour flat out. Display Director Squadron Leader Steve Green explains how they cope with a major air show and a sky full of visiting aircraft.
Well, at any one time, the maximum we're going to have will be the Red Arrows, of course, with 9 aircraft. But at the other times, I don't anticipate more than 5 to 6 aircraft actually on frequency at any one time. A lot of it depends on aircraft coming in from other venues. There's a display going on at the same time at RAF Valley, and quite a few of our display aircraft are coming from Valley. And so, although we can predict to a certain degree what time they're due to arrive, there's always certain variations due to air traffic delays, aircraft going US, that sort of thing. And so we can't say exactly when they're going to arrive, but we do have a holding pattern set up which is to the south of the airfield, which will make sure that everybody is clear of the airfield unless they're actually displaying.
No air display is complete without the classic performance of the magnificent Lancaster bomber, flown by Squadron Leader Andy Tomalin and Navigator Flight Lieutenant Scott Notman. They are supported today by the Hurricane and Spitfire. The sound of those Merlin engines is as distinctive today as it was 50 years ago, and kept in tip-top condition by the dedicated engineers of RAF Coningsby. Just sit back and enjoy the sight and sound of the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. Designed by R.H. Mitchell, the Spitfire must rank as the world's most famous fighter. The sound of the Merlin engines makes it a legend in aviation. 22,759 were built. A newcomer to the airshow circuit is the Hawker Fury ISS, wearing the colours of the Dutch Navy, today flown very confidently by Alan Walker. The Sea Fury became the ultimate piston-engined fighter, developed from the Typhoon and Tempest. The prototype flew in 1945, and production began in 1946, with around 650 planes being built. It became the Royal Navy's standard fighter until the Seahawk came into service in May 1948. The aircraft saw considerable action in the Korean War against the MiG-15, with a top speed of 450 miles per hour and a range of 1,040 miles. On a normal day at RAF Leeming, the air traffic control handle a varied amount of aircraft movements, from the normal operational sorties to major NATO exercises, where the airfield can be under threat of attack from hostile forces. Squadron leader Steve Roberts explains how they cope with a major air show.
We'll all be working on a common frequency so that we're all in contact with each other, so they can hear what we're saying and they can hear each other as well. Again, that's the safety feature that comes into air traffic control. And most of the work will be done from up here in the visual control room on the actual day. So we're making sure they're in the right place at the right time for the enjoyment of the public. So most of the work will be done by looking out of the window, and the pilots will be flying visually. The only time they'll be talking to the radar room downstairs is when they hold in the hole, or the stack as some people might know it, before they come in to participate in the air show itself.
Surprisingly, a very visible approach to the airshow. The Red Arrows arrive at Leeming from their display at Valley, but more of them later. Another rare find from the old flying machine company at Duxford is the Lockheed T-33 GT jet, veteran of World War II, piloted by Mark Hanna. This aircraft was an important milestone in aviation, being one of the first to have a turbojet engine. Developed from the de Havilland H-1B Goblin, the single-seat version being the PF-80 and later the F-80. The United States Air Force modified the aircraft by stretching the fuselage by an extra 3 feet, making it into a 2-seat jet trainer. This modification delighted the Air Force, making the already fast aircraft much faster and more stable in the air. The prototype flew in 1947 and became a production aircraft in 1948. Hang on to your stomachs. It's the Team Toyota, the guys who put the A into aerobatics. They are flying Pit Specials and the Extra 300. Nigel Lamb is the current British aerobatics champion, and well he deserves it. Steve Johnson joined the team after serving 3 years with the Red Arrows. Prior to that, he flew Harriers and Hawks and became European display pilot for the Harrier GR3. Lee Proudfoot started the hard way by obtaining his private pilot's license in 1986 and has progressed through many different aircraft to ultimately flying Boeing 737s for 3.5 years. Lee has over 3,500 flying hours on 40 different types of aircraft, and he is only 26 years old. Steve Johnson and Lee Proudfoot battle it out over the runway and thrill the crowds with their magnificent display of aerial acrobatics. Nigel Lamb tests the airframe of the Extra 300 and even found time to give us a wave as he made an extra low pass past the control tower window. Radar plays a big part in the operational role of this aircraft. The Nimrod's primary function is maritime reconnaissance, patrolling the UK's assets in the North Sea oil fields to keep watch and protect a vital industry. Our example today is from 206 Squadron Kinloss, flown by Flight Lieutenant Duncan Mills, co-pilot Flight Lieutenant Max Thomas, and Sergeant Stu Andrews as flight engineer, plus a crew of 8. The Buccaneer, in its final year of active service, is still a firm favourite at air shows, and with those who fly them. Flight Lieutenant Neil Benson of 208 Squadron, Lossiemouth, puts on a fabulous display for the crowds here in sunny weather conditions. This is certainly an unusual way to blow away the cobwebs. Wingwalkers Helen Tempest and Sarah Cubitt put all their faith in Matthew Hill and Mike Dentith's skills in dodging flocks of birds, which could prove very messy. Sponsored by TFM Radio on Teesside, the performance is, as usual, faultless and seamless as the 1993 Red Arrows routine gets underway. Whilst Jeff Day was whizzing around in his Robinson R-22 helicopter, I wonder if Flight Lieutenant Rob Lee was thinking, anything you can do, I can do better, only a lot faster. What more can be said about this amazing aircraft? Flight Lieutenant Rob Lee puts the Harrier through its paces. If you ever need to be rescued by a helicopter, just double check that it's not Flight Lieutenant Steve Garden and Doug Brown of RAF Boma at the controls, as you could be in for the flight of a lifetime. As the Spitfire takes off for its final set piece, Steve Green looks on anxiously as the finale pairing of the Spitfire and the F-3 Tornado flies the 75th anniversary tribute to the RAF. It was hoped the SE-5A could have joined this historical formation, but the 30 knots of crosswind unfortunately precluded its participation. Congratulations to Leeming and the RAF for the biggest and the best Leeming Air Fair staged. As the display Jaguar departs, so do most of the 50,000 strong crowd. But it's not quite over yet. Early the following morning, over 300 airmen and officers set off on the FOD pod to pick up every scrap of paper and foreign object debris on the airfield before anything can fly. By Monday morning, RAF Leeming is fit for royalty and business as usual.